Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Every quarter, we have conversations with business leaders that help shed light on how we view the markets, how we view our investments, and how we run our business here at EMBREY. Today, we're going to talk about how organizations endure over the decades and specifically how cultures help organizations thrive even in the face of difficult market conditions. I'm going to be talking to two people who have done it at the highest level of professional sports. Peter Holt is chairman of Spurs Sports and Entertainment, and he's the majority owner. I had the pleasure of meeting Peter when I first moved back to San Antonio, actually through pickup basketball. He's a great guy. He's fiercely competitive. He's committed to the community, and he takes his stewardship of the Spurs extremely seriously. RC Buford is CEO of the Spurs. I've admired his work from afar since I was a teenager. He's widely respected as one of the best executives in the business, two-time executive of the year, praised by his peers, players, and coaches alike. And it can't be overstated just how important he is, not only for the Spurs, but for the league itself. So, Peter and RC, thank you for joining me today. I couldn't be more excited about the call.
Happy to be here.
Great. Um, what is especially impressive to me about the Spurs is not what they've done, but just how they've done it. They do it the right way. They come from a position of values-based leadership. All those efforts have resulted in five championship, countless accolades, an incredible coaching tree, and really widely regarded as one of the best organizations within the league. It all comes down to their ethos, pound the rock. And at its core, what that means is to do the right thing day in and day out, to not cut any corners, and that ultimately that process will lead to success. And it's really how we run our business here at Embry. So with that, I'd like to start with just the general question of how do you do it? How do you maintain that culture year in and year out? How do you stick to your values even in the face of hardship? And Peter, why don't you go ahead and kick us off, please?
Sure, I'll start, and then RC is probably a little bit better equipped to answer from a operational or just maybe tell some stories. I don't know, but I think it's probably helpful to understand our entry into professional sports and entry into the Spurs because that shapes a lot of how we still think about it, even though we're now one of the longest tenured ownership groups in the NBA. And it's actually kind of crazy, since we entered as the controlling owner in the mid '90s. From then to now, there's only five other teams that have had the same controlling ownership groups, and we take a lot of pride in that. But at the time, our core family business is heavy equipment and heavy equipment distribution and really participating in the industrial space. So I would
We use it
argue,
every day on site.
yeah, hopefully,
Yeah.
I would argue that it's probably the furthest thing away from the glamour or the perceived glamour of professional sports and media and entertainment. But our family moved from Corpus Christi to San Antonio when I was very young, and our kind of the way that San Antonio welcomed us, and I think welcomes a lot of people, is numerous different things, but the Spurs is a big part of that. It's a unifying place. It's a presence that has kind of unfiltered joy, and no matter what neighborhood you live in, you can have camaraderie and fellowship around the Spurs. We're one professional team town, and so we immediately developed a relationship and went to games and went to the 3-on-3 tournaments they put on and Spurs camps in the summer and all that kind of stuff. And pretty quickly there was a sense of urgency around the risk that the Spurs would potentially leave San Antonio due to the fact that we could not get a new arena built, and the NBA was basically mandating that all the cities and teams have a world-class, sophisticated, dedicated arenas, places to play. And, and so when those alarm bells went off in the community, My parents stepped up, thinking that they were joining a group, being part of a group that would invest in the Spurs and stabilize the Spurs here in San Antonio. Little did my dad know that he would be asked to be the chairman of the board and the controlling owner, and so took a bit of a leap and risk to do that. And people kind of forget that the first kind of full year that my parents were in that position, we had our worst season ever. We were coming off of really great highs with Dave Robinson, Western Conference Finals, a kind of beloved coach, and my dad and mom didn't know much about sports or basketball, but what they did know about was a strong belief in their core values and how that should extend to business, and that there was not necessarily a separation between doing the right thing and success in business or success in sport. And so they made that the top priority, regardless of winning or losing games. The priority was doing the right thing, and the way that our family has always approached that is through people. Is align and surround yourself with people that have common values, no matter what, no matter the external pressures, no matter changes that happen, no matter what. And that was, I think, the fortuitous part of this is, I think that you can call it luck. I would call it the law of attraction. That once my parents established that, there was kind of pretty immediate fortune of people that were either drafted to us or attracted to us, like Pop and RC and numerous folks in the business organization, and then obviously players, and that believe that same thing, that we did not have to sacrifice a successful culture, a successful outcomes on and off the court, if we were going to have a culture that was defined by integrity and doing the right thing and putting in the work. And so, the rest of kind of the successful outcomes is based on those people, being great and always agreeing upon the foundation of values.
Yeah. Well said. And RC, how does that manifest itself actually in the day-to-day? Like, what are the mechanisms that you use to actually instill that values-based people first approach?
When the Holt family first joined our and led our investor group, Peter's father brought values-based leadership to our program. And he didn't tell us these are your values. He challenged us as an organization to develop our own values that we were going to hold ourselves accountable to. And so we went through an 18-month facilitated exercise and developed integrity, success, and caring as the values. And that's really the foundation that has carried us forward to this day. As a team, we had an intern in 2001 named Sam Presti. Sam's now the GM of Oklahoma City and the current NBA champion. Sam asked me the question what our basketball values were. And we listened to the conversations that our coaches and our players were having over the course of a year. And really, they wanted to be around high character people that wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. And so from listening to their stories, we established character selfless, pound the rock, which you've already explained. The stonecutter goes to work hammering at the stone, and when it finally breaks, he knows it wasn't that blow that did it, but all the work that came before. And so character selfless, pound the rock are the top of our funnel as we look through our player selection. And any player, any coach, anybody that comes into our basketball program is going to be selected or eliminated. I think that's the other thing about player procurement. It's not just a selection process, it's an elimination process. And the more we can focus on just people that we know that fit here, the better chance we have of making the right choices.
Yeah, it's a good point. I'd push you a little bit because I'm sure if you went to any NFL draft room or NBA draft room, they say something about character and values and making sure you're a fit. But you guys have just seemed to do it better, right? You've shunned people that don't fit the system, don't fit your values, and you've attracted people like Peter said, law of attraction. What do you think separates you? I mean, you're clearly doing it better than others. What in the system actually separates you from all those other people that are also kind of preaching the same thing?
The first thing I'd say is I don't know whether we do it better or worse than anybody else. We do what we do and we hold ourselves
Hmm.
accountable to it. I can't control what others do. Um, so we focus on what we do. I think we don't take risk often. And if we do take risk, there's only one trade. Pop, over the course of time, thought he was the Latrell Sprewell whisperer. And he was dying to get Spree into our program. And we had a trade that we could have done to trade for Spree. And Peter's father, the only time he's ever told us you can't do a deal was, I won't do that deal with that financial risk. If you can figure out a different way to do it where it's not as big a financial risk, then we'll reconsider it. And so it's really just risk analysis. On a couple of occasions, we've taken a risk that we were aware of, that we held ourselves accountable to, and when it wasn't fitting within our values or within the team concept, um, we removed those players from our team.
Makes sense. That kind of naturally leads me to kind of sustaining culture through change of personnel. We've all lost team players. Embry, we lost a couple key partners over the past few years just through retirement and sort of naturally moving on. You guys have obviously lost a lot of people. A great example in my mind is Tim Duncan. Tim had a great sort of sweeping the sheds mentality. He was never late to practice in 20 years. He insisted upon setting up and taking down his own rebounding machines. When you lose that standard bearer, like some organizations, that's a vacancy, right? That's an opportunity to kind of get away from your culture. What fills the gap? Is it just communication and leadership from you and the Holts and the coaching staff, or is there an immediate need for another standard bearer to step up?
I think it wasn't only Tim that left. We had generational players that were leaving. It was also at the same time that the Holtz family was going through a generational leadership change within the Spurs. And so the commitment but we did have the stability of Pop. And I think as we were going through the rebuild, there are many teams that develop losing habits. And while we were going through what was required to rebuild, um, we we didn't allow losing habits to happen. We continued to hold each other accountable to standards that raised the standards of everyone. And I think there's been a couple of good articles with Keldon Johnson, who joined us, kind of 19 right at the beginning of the rebuild. And he's the one player that's still with us through that time. And Keldon talked about the roles that people have had to take differently, especially as a new young team that has different focal points around it. And just that commitment to not developing losing habits, to staying consistent with our values. Um,
Yeah.
Culture that Tim and Tony and Manu and David Robinson before him and Sean Elliott and Avery, those cultures change over time. Social media creates an entirely different environment to build culture around than what we once had. Cultures will change, hopefully, if we stay consistent in the values of the people we bring in, that they'll resemble each other. through the habits and the standards that we hold ourselves accountable to.
The other thing I'd say is, like, I sort of joke that RC and Pop are like, they're like mafia dons. It's like you never really get to leave the Spurs in the best way possible. Dave Robinson's part of our ownership group. Tim was an assistant coach and still around the practice facility. Manu is part of our front office. Sean is an announcer and around all the time. And I would put that around business and kind of all aspects in the fact of or in the opportunity of there's this unique heart that people are attracted to and don't want to leave, and we encourage that, and are both intentional and open to, even though that may change. Tim's not playing anymore, so his role is going to look different, but ensuring that if there's mutual desire to stay connected, then that happens, and I think that's very, very unique. And then the other thing I would say is that there's obviously fear and conversation around it being scary, these big changes. At the same time, there's also like a weird parallel truth of kind of excitement and optimism, and to what RC's saying about the culture should change, and maybe the practice or the physical manifestation of the values in the culture should change, and that can be as small as, do we play music at practices or not, or what hotels do we stay in, or it can be as small, or it can be really big things, like obviously, like changing the entire team personnel, right? The entire player as team has changed over. So and embracing that with a intention of ensuring that everybody knows how, kind of how we're going to show up, how we're going to talk to each other, and that foundation of values, I think, is really important. However, it's like you have to trust the people that are here now, and even if there is going to be a change in pattern or behavior or habits, that's actually okay. And I think that's kind of a weird thing to say, because it feels in conflict, this desire for continuity, and this understanding that change will happen.
It's really interesting, and something I would touch on that you said, from somebody who's not from San Antonio, and he sort of, the people on this call, again, you can't really overstate about how tied in the Spurs are with the community. I mean, you see these former players in the community all the time that they are bought in, and I have to think that that's a result of everything they did with the Spurs, over the years, and it's great to see. And the Spurs, frankly, more so than any other professional team that I've seen, have done an incredible job of kind of melding with the community and getting that buy-in. It really is an identity we have here in San Antonio. This kind of leads me to two part.
Can I add one other thing?
Yes, sir.
So with the 50th anniversary, and then with the latest arena election, we have spent quite a bit of time making sure that we're connected with the people who part of our alumni group. And what I've found through that time is San Antonio has more former Spurs living in San Antonio than any other NBA franchise, or any other community, with the exception of New York and LA. And that's just kind of a reflection on where people grew up. But there are more than 30 former Spurs living in San Antonio, not only that retired as Spurs or that were Spurs, left and now have come back. Monty Williams, George Hill, Antonio Daniels, who left our team but now are back in our community because just of the relationships that you talked about.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Bowen's a local coach of a lot of our youth teams, and it's great to see him out there hustling. kind of a two-part question as a follow-up. I would love to dig in a little bit about how y'all changed over the years, right? Every company deals with this. Their generations are different. People are incentivized differently, motivated differently. And so how do you change how you talk to those people? And then part B is there's a specific sort of nuance when it comes to not just our business, but professional sports, and that's incentives, right? I read that the difference between a player making a bucket and assisting on a bucket in the playoffs is probably $60,000. That information is probably dated. It may be $100,000 by now. We have the same thing in our business, right? We have a lot of aggressive people that are out there trying to go get deals, create value. So we do a lot to try to align ownership, management, participants throughout the value chain. And y'all have to deal with both of those things: the change in generation over time, and then the incentivization of the individuals. Um, Peter, should kick us off. Like, how do you view those sort of two questions?
Yeah, I mean, I'll sort of hit incentives first, but I think our belief is that we've we've always wanted to outpunch our weight class.
Hmm.
And weight class generally in our space means market positioning and market size. And so we're a bottom five market size as the NBA defines it. And that's not just population, that's a variety of metrics. Um, and so, if we're I mean, not to make it overly simple, but, if we're going to outpunch that, then we need to have great people at all levels. And, we need to pay well. And then align further incentives with the outcomes that we want. And so, obviously, to your point, sports has very specific black and white outcomes: winning and losing, points per game, whatever that is. But there's also the more subjective, that I would actually argue is more important, which is community impact, living our values, caring and success. Putting basically the higher purpose first, over yourself. And I think that if you look at how we compensate, it generally is aligned with wanting to pay for that performance at the highest level. And does that mean we're always paying number one or number three? Probably not. But we want our various compensation structures to be balanced with the outcomes we desire, and also kind of fit within the sustainability and long-term mindset that we have. And for that purpose, our kind of ownership mindset is really all the positive proceeds that we get, we reinvest into the company. And we're not interested in using this as our personal cash flow entity. And so I think that mindset can be challenging as you flow it through the organization, because in a lot of our other family businesses, there's a very clear outcome on profitability, that we are, I wouldn't say mandating, but expecting. And there's some benefits to that because it's more black and white. But I think the philosophy and mindset has worked really well, in the fact that our biggest incentive is we believe that we can do the right thing and win at the highest level. And when we find people that also believe in that, we want them to have personal rewards that are aligned with that, and potentially outsized to the market that we should be
Yeah,
operating within.
makes sense. RC, how does that translate into the actual management of the team? And I'll take Ginobili, for instance. six man of the year, came off the bench for years, could have been an all-star starter elsewhere, probably could have gotten paid more elsewhere. Dylan Harper now coming off the bench, realize he's a rookie, but likely would be a starter elsewhere. And that's that sort of transition of management that I'm talking about between generations. Like how does Peter's sort of overall comments kind of translate down into managing those guys and managing those personalities and keeping them motivated to show up and work their hardest and lead the team every day?
I believe that that's a reflection of the people that we bring into our program and the work that we've done in our evaluation of what's important to the people that we bring into the program. It and then once they're here, the focus on being part of something bigger than yourself and getting people to recognize what's best for the team is what that's gonna make our decisions for us over the course of time. Every time Tim Duncan would get a new best friend on the team, it would seem like we traded that person. And Tim could have, raised hell and said, what are you doing? But when he was a part of the process, and we involve the players in the team that they want to be a part of and that they want to lead. And so when we do make those kinds of decisions, we involve the players, and then they recognize the sacrifices that it will take. Ask Manu to go to the bench. The people in Argentina raised all kinds of hell, and it was at the beginning of Twitter. So there's all of a sudden this new voice of social media that was up in arms over that. And Papa was clear with Manu the reasons why this was done. It gave Manu a different path to really being an all-star, six man of the year, and having an advantage in places. And over the course of time now, it's interesting to see Mitch carry it forward. And some of that messaging is similar to how Pop would have delivered it. And some of it's very different in the way that he builds team and culture. And that's what's Peter talked about, the changes that happen with Brian Wright and Mitch Johnson as our GM and our coach now. It's really fun and interesting for me to step back and say, is that how we would have done it? Or is it even more effective to see a new approach to getting people to recognize what's most important for the team?
Yeah.
I would also just say that as I've talked with a lot of folks that have, to your point, Manu could have made more money, Tim could have, a lot of people could have made more money. I think that at the same time, even though, what's the statement? Comparison is the root of all unhappiness. And I think that most folks have this gratitude and humility that they received personal rewards beyond their wildest dreams. Now, if they were to then compare those personal rewards to others in same situations, it may drive a level of dissatisfaction. Yet, I think it's back to attracting the people that don't just view personal rewards as monetary compensation. And so the other aspects of a fulfilling environment to be in, a support for family and friends, physical place, beauty and warmth, I think all play a factor into overall compensation, not just monetary. And so I think that philosophy is really exemplified, and I've seen that over and over. Even though both things can be true, I should have been paid more, and my wildest dreams have come true. Those two things can be true, and I think that what I've found is that even though there's a lot of potential consternation around hard conversations. I think that is a habit and a theme that is worth glorifying, quite frankly, within the organization, that we just have had a whole lot of leaders that are willing to have difficult conversations where potentially multiple things are true, with the guiding principle that the higher purpose comes first, the team comes first, the organization comes first, and even when it's hard.
Understood. I'd like to get into the adversity conversation a little bit. The Spurs have had certainly your fair share of successes, but also your fair share of tough times. The obvious one for me is 2013 finals for those non-Spurs fans. It was just a brutal ending. We snatched defeat from the jaws of victory with the last second sort of three-pointer from Ray Allen against the Heat in Game 6 of the finals. Um, Team was absolutely gutted. Champagne was on ice. A trophy was on the floor, ready to be awarded, and it just didn't happen for us that year. But it's not what happened at the game and the loss. It's what happened afterwards, right? Pop had a celebratory dinner planned. They ended up having the dinner after Game 6, even though we didn't win. And they came together and they broke bread and they recovered. And Tony Parker kind of famously said, if not for everything that happened in the finals of 2013 and how we came together, there's no way we would have won in 2014. I'd love to get kind of the inside story of what happened after that finals, and specifically what happened at that dinner and how you used that event to bring the team together.
The Garrett sets it up well. We were in a position to win. It was a team that was supposedly too old to get back to the finals. It was Tim at 36, Manu at 35, Tony at 34, and we were there. We had the trophy was on the side of the court, and then we didn't happen. And Pop left the pregame or the postgame press conference, went right to the restaurant, and was very purposeful in setting up. We had the restaurant reserved. We knew we were either going to play Game 7 and we needed to get back together and get ready for it, or we'd be celebrating. And we didn't celebrate, but we cried and we laughed and we broke bread together. Players' families were there. He didn't let anybody wallow in their sorrow. And we actually came back and played better in Game 7 than we had in Game 6. Shane Battier made 6 threes that night, and we ended up losing in the last minute. From that point forward was where I think Pop's magic really took over in getting ready for the next season. We went to a different location. We went to Air Force Academy to have training camp, which we hadn't done in probably 15 years. We hadn't gone off site for training camp. The last day of training camp, we had training camp there while the government was shut down. So there was no civil working help. And so we had to serve the players. I mean, we had to serve the cadets, and the cadets served our players as we were having meals on the campus. Last day of training camp, we drove right by the gym on the way to practice, and the players are going, what's going on here? And we went to the obstacle course that the cadets have to go through in preparation for becoming a cadet at the academy. And we stopped, and the drill sergeants got on the bus and started yelling, get the hell out of here, get off the bus, get out there, get ready to work. And Tim was the first one off the bus. And both the coaches and the players went through a really team building exercise that got everybody's mindset in a different place. The players were much more capable of getting through the obstacle course than the coaches were. So there was a lot of laughing and having fun together. And then also we watched game 6 of the series the year before from the beginning to the end. And what the message was, it wasn't one play at the end of the game that cost us. It wasn't anybody's single responsibility. We all had plays throughout the game that we could have taken care of, and we'd have put ourselves in a position to win. And so we're also, every place we go, people are going to want to talk about this. The media are going to ask you about it. Other players are going to say stuff. We're not going to talk about this again. And it freed them to just say no. And it didn't have to have a reason. It was just, no, we're not talking about it. Over the course of the year, we played incredibly well. Maybe the best basketball that we played in a long time. And we got back to the finals against the Heat. And game 1 of the finals, we had our morning shoot around where the scouting preparation goes on, and Pop brought the team together, and he hit Patty Mills and said, "Patty, do you know what today is?" And Patty looked at him kind of strange, and he said, "Pop, it's game 1 of the finals. It's the Heat. It's our chance for revenge. Let's go." And Pop said, "Patty, what else is it?" And part of Pop's team building was bringing people together in unusual ways and we had 11 of our 14 players that year born outside the United States, and using those opportunities to get to know about each other, not as basketball players, but as people, and to see the shared experiences, to see the experiences that impacted each other's lives that weren't shared. So Patty said, "I don't know, Pop, what else is today?" And Pop goes, "Isn't it Eddie Mabo Day?" And I don't know how Pop knew that it was Eddie Mabo Day, but Eddie Mabo was the first Indigenous Australian to legally get the right to own land. And Patty was Aboriginal or Indigenous to Australia, first Indigenous Australian in American sports. Patty proceeded to tell the story of Eddie Mabo. Patty's mother was Aboriginal. Patty's father was from the Torres Strait Islands. And Eddie Mabo turned out to be a Tory Islander, and he was also Patty's uncle 4 times removed, which Pop didn't know. But the story of Eddie Mabo, the importance of him to the Indigenous community, the story took about 20 minutes, and the whole team was in tears. And emotionally, they were so connected. And we didn't go out and figure out how we were going to guard LeBron James in the pick and roll. We just went out and played. And we played the best basketball we've ever played in our lives. And you can't tell me that being so connected didn't have a big part of that. And we kicked their ass, beat them in 5 games. And it was the best basketball we'd ever played. And it started the night of game 6 with Pop not letting people wallow in the sorrow of the night, but coming back together and being a part of something bigger than themselves.
It's just a great story. The Spurs have been focused on inclusivity and connection since before DEI existed, before it was a buzzword. And I think that the end goal is all about that sort of team building. And they're in this position where they can see the fruits of that labor sort of day in and day out on the court. In business, I think the inclusivity and the connection and the team building is every bit as important. It's a little bit harder to see the end result because we're not, playing together and passing to each other, but it's the same. It's the same basic ethos. Peter, did that come from your parents? Did it come from you? Did it come from Pop? Like, where did that original idea of inclusivity and connectiveness come from?
I think that if you probably look at some of the leaders' backgrounds, it's probably some innate type traits. Both my father and Pop served in the military. And the military is definitely drives kind of that the value of unity and connection, no matter where you're from or what you look like. And I think that probably shapes a good amount of it. And then, yeah, I think that I don't think there's a single source, and I think the best organizations don't have a single source. They have probably leaders or a leader that enforces it, but I think it's a collective push. And one of the wonderful things that I've observed is that it's pretty rare at the Spurs that there is a decision made, in a vacuum. One person. There's a lot of discussion, and good ideas can come from anywhere. And I think that is probably the most reinforcing habit, that proves that we're not necessarily into inclusivity or diversity for the purpose of it. We're in it because it's the right thing to do, and it yields outsized results, both you know physical results you can see, and then results you can't see, which is um, you know being of service and connection and relationship building. And I think that's always been a priority that individual folks have pushed for. And
Yeah.
I think that we've always been attracted to, and people have been attracted to us, that are comfortable living in the weird dualities of life, Pop. I mean, RC was just sharing, of these times where it's intensely all about basketball, and yet it's not. And how do you embrace that versus fight against it? And I think that we've just had incredible people that have been willing to embrace that.
That's all good to hear. HBS
Garrett,
should do a study on y'all if they haven't already. Go ahead,
Garrett,
RC.
we're living through, as teams evolve, you never know how that connectivity will happen. But the story of the stonecutter is the only thing you'll see on our walls in our basketball environment. And it just is, we hope it defines our ethos on the way from the locker room to the court. So the journey that the players take at, at our arena, we have it translated in every language of the players who are currently on the team. And we had the biggest challenge we've ever had in those translations this year. Lindy, this year we have it in French. We had it in Polish, which Jeremy Sohan's mother helped translate for us when he first came here. We have it in a Congolese dialect, and we have Lindy Waters, who is a Native American. He's the only Native American in the NBA right now, and I think the fifth all time. And so we try to have it up when the season starts of the team of the players on the team. And I went everywhere, including AI, to try to get it translated into a Native American dialect for one of the two tribes that Lindy is from. And neither one of them had written languages. And so
Wow.
Lindy was the National Indian of the Year in 2023 when he first made the NBA, 24 when he first made the NBA. And he went to the tribal leaders across the country, and nobody knew how to translate it. So we came up with one word that intimates the story, the ethos of the story, and that's all that's in the pathway for his language. Everybody that he's next to that is new to that hallway, it's really fun to sit him and tell the story of what that means in a Native American language. And that's been part of the I think what brings the group together is just the difference of experiences that they've shared to get to their part of the journey that the team is on. And this team, with what Mitch and Brian have brought together, I think is as connected as most or many of the teams that we've ever had here.
That's great to hear. And Lindy had a great pregame ceremony. It's that Friday night. It
Yeah.
was great to see him out there. Running out of time here, so maybe a couple quick last questions for you guys. Like I mentioned before, our business has been difficult the past 4 years between interest rates and high supply environments. It's just been a challenging business. Now we're now seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I would kind of compare it to where you guys were in 2020, 21 after a few rough years. But what we've seen is, we've seen a lot of people change careers or change businesses or retire altogether. And I kind of always question when I see that sort of lack of what I would call motivation or lack of gumption, and not to throw stones because that's not my intent, but my intent to say in my mind, you kind of work through it, right? You kind of go through it every day, and at the end, you have confidence that you're going to get to the end. Again, going back to the stone cutter. But what is the motivation for y'all? Y'all have been at it for a very long time. You've had a ton of success. What gets you out of bed every morning, excited to go sort of attack the day and take this organization to the next level?
What I would say is for me, and I think for our ownership group, is positive impact. When the majority of the time that fans or people or stakeholders give feedback on their experience with the Spurs, there's some positive memory or positive impact that is not something like small talk, like, I'm excited we're in the playoffs, or, remember when we won the championship versus the Heat. There's usually a family memory, or there is a relationship. I was able to take my dad to the game, or man, I was there with my 7-year-old. That was his first time to go to a playoffs. That'll always be a core memory. And then I would, then the actual service that we do in the various communities that we serve. I think that's really the ultimate driver that, keeps me going and keeps us going, is that no matter the win-loss record of a season, the ability to create and be part of joy and positivity and helping others is hard to tie short-term outcomes to that, which is great.
That's incredible. To me, what I hear is you basically are using basketball as a tool for maximum impact on people, community, just overall success, and that's awesome. RC, what about you?
I think it's very similar to what Peter said. We have an opportunity to bring community together, and most of our community around the world won't ever see a Spurs game in person, or many of our community won't see a Spurs game in person. But that doesn't prevent us from being able to connect people through experiences that we drive, whether it's in our arena, whether it's in our digital and social, whether it's in our impact work in the community. I think when really hard times come, we're a voice that can bring people together to help solve big problems. Whether we've had the school shooting in Uvalde 2 or 3 years ago, the floods in the Hill Country last summer. We can be a big community leader to bring people together as we look at helping San Antonio and our region grow. We're the fastest growing region in North America right now, and we're a part of that community that can really bring people together and help us solve hard problems, and also bring great entertainment.
Well, wrapping up here, I'm really, really appreciative of both of your times. I'm super optimistic, not just about heading into the playoffs this year. You guys have put in a fantastic team together, doing all the right things. but also so optimistic about where you're going to take this organization going forward. Optimistic about Project Marvel and having a real imprint on downtown. So thank you for all you do for the Spurs, for the community. Thank you for your time here today, and appreciate everyone getting on the call. As always, if Embry or I can help you with anything, always do feel free to reach out. But Peter, RC, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Garrett. See everybody
Thank
later.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.